Well, hello everybody. I am back with another fairy tale for your enjoyment. It has been a while, hasn't it? It's been a couple weeks since I have done this. That's because life gets busy sometimes, I guess. Honestly, I wasn't even sure if I was gonna be able to do it today because we, my mom might be in here for a while because I got a new bookshelf recently, and I think she wanted to try and build it for me today, which I'm really excited about because my ginormous braille books are kind of all over the place at this point because we can't find space for them. So, yeah. But it's still pretty early when I'm recording this, so I thought I might do that while no one is doing anything. But, yeah. Today's story is The Wild Swans by Hans Christian Andersen. Whoop-de-doo, another Andersen story. This one is a pretty interesting one, but I feel like it's definitely not, like, the wackiest story by him. So, yeah. I enjoy it, though. But let's get started. In a faraway kingdom, there lived a king with 11 charming sons and a beautiful daughter named Elise. The princess and her brothers were the happiest of children, but this was not to last. The king decided to remarry and chose a cruel woman as his wife. The new queen sent Elise far from home and told the king such lies about his sons that he could no longer even bear to look at them. The wicked queen sent the princes out into the world to find their own way. "Fly as birds and speak no more," she cried, and transformed them into swans. With a mournful cry, the princes flew from the palace and settled in a distant forest. In her new home, Elise had no idea that her brothers, now swans, were flying overhead. She thought of them often, wishing they were with her. Several years passed, each day much like the one before. When Elise turned 15, she was sent for by the king and queen. How her stepmother fumed when she saw how beautiful Elise had become. She longed to turn the girl into a bird, as she had her brothers. But the king demanded to see his daughter. The queen tried spell after spell to ruin the girl's looks, but none of them had any effect. Elise was just too kind and good. So the wicked woman rubbed a stinging juice into the princess's skin and put an evil-smelling ointment on her hair. Elise was simply unrecognizable, and the king sent the girl away, sure that she wasn't his child. Elise wandered the palace, searching for her brothers. When she realized they were no longer there, the poor girl walked and walked until she came to a forest. There she made a bed upon the mossy ground and fell asleep. The next day Elise went deeper into the forest, where she found a lake. Its surface was as shiny as a mirror. Elise saw how dreadful she looked, so she washed and washed until she looked like a princess again. Now, very hungry, Elise met an old woman who kindly offered her food. Elise asked the woman if she had seen her brothers, but she replied, "I have not, but I did see 11 lovely swans on the river." Elise thanked the old woman and started out along the river bank, searching for any sign of the swans. At the ocean, where she could go on no farther, Elise spotted 11 gleaming white feathers floating in the breaking surf, and silhouetted in the setting sun, 11 swans were flying into land. As the sun dipped below the horizon, the swans gathered around Elise. Their feathers vanished, revealing her missing brothers. The princes were so happy to see Elise that they could not stop hugging her as they explained. "We fly as swans," one said. "Only during the day," the youngest exclaimed. "At night we are human again." "Yes, and we must reach land before the sun sets," added the first, "or we'll tumble into the ocean and drown." Elise learned that the brothers could fly home just once a year. They had only one resting place on the way, a small rock in the ocean. Now that they had found her, there were just 2 days left before the brothers had to leave. They decided that Elise should return with them, so the princes began to weave a mat of rushes on which they could carry her. As the sun rose on their final day, the swans took the mat in their bills, with Elise still sleeping between them. As they flew, the youngest prince shaded Elise from the sun with his wings. When they reached the little rock in the ocean, they spent the night huddled close together. The following day's journey took Elise and the swans over many lands, with breathtaking sights of strange mountains and fairy palaces where humans were forbidden. At last the swans descended toward the cave where they lived. That night the princess dreamed that she met a beautiful young fairy. The fairy looked so much like the old woman from the forest that they could only be one and the same. The fairy whispered, "You can break the spell on your brothers, Elise. Be brave and determined. Gather stinging nettles from the churchyard nearby. Take as many as you can, no matter how much they burn your hands. Tear them up until they turn to flax. Then weave coats for your brothers. They will transform into men once more, but from this moment until the task is complete, you may not utter another word, or you will fail and your brothers will die." When she awoke, Elise began her task in earnest. She gathered nettles and bruised them into flax, and spun and wove the first of the magical green coats. The princes flew home that night to discover their sister struck dumb. She would not speak a word. When the youngest saw what she was doing and how her hands and arms blistered, he wept. Drenched in his tears, Elise's skin was healed, and her pain vanished, but she still refused to speak. The next day Elise heard the sound of a hunt approaching, and quickly hid her work. The leader of the hunting party, the king of this land, thought that he had never seen anyone more lovely. He asked Elise how she came to be there, but of course she could not reply. The king would not leave her alone in the forest, and when Elise said nothing, he swept her upon his horse and took her back to his castle. There, the princess was dressed in fine robes, and the king declared that he would marry her the next day, though she still hadn't spoken a word. Elise was shown to a bedroom. She smiled for the first time in hours. Everything from the forest had been brought to the castle, the nettle, including the nettle coat she had made. The king made plans for the wedding, all the while his ignoring his bishop's hints that Elise might be a witch. During the ceremony, the king did not notice as the bishop pressed the crown down viciously on Elise's head. She still did not utter a word because it would harm her brothers. If only she could explain to the king, who she had grown to love, why she could not speak. Still, each night Elise wove coats for her brothers. One night, when the flax ran out, she crept from the castle to the churchyard for more nettles. Who should be awake at night to see her? None other than the suspicious bishop. Now he knew he was right. She was a witch. He went to the king to inform him. Tears formed in the king's eyes at the news, but he too grew suspicious. Elise noticed the king's mood darken, but did not know why. She continued her task with determination. With just one magical coat left to complete, she went out to collect more nettles one last time. Little did Elise know that the king and the bishop followed close behind. When they saw her plucking nettles from the churchyard at night, the king knew she must be condemned as a witch and executed. Sent to the castle dungeons with nothing but her woven coats and nettles, Elise carried on with her task and unable to think of anything else. As the evening drew on, the young queen heard the sound of wings at the high window of her cell, and looked up with delight to see the youngest of her swan brothers. They had found her. This was her final night to complete the last of the coats, so Elise did not stop. Mice brought the nettles closer, and a song thrush sang all night to help her work. The princes stood at the castle gates and demanded an audience with the king. But when the sun rose, they were nowhere to be seen, though 11 swans flew mournfully overhead. As the cart pulled Elise toward her execution, she wove constantly, trying to finish the final coat for her brothers before her death. Sorry, I got mixed up with my words a little bit. A crowd gathered and jeered as she sat weaving what they thought must be spells. Before the angry people could take the coats from her, Elise threw them into the air as her 11 swan brothers swooped above. As each of them was covered by a coat, she transformed back into a man, all except the youngest, whose coat was not quite complete. The unfinished sleeve of his coat meant that One of his arms would forever remain a swan's wing. Elise sank to the floor with relief as her brothers gathered around her. "At last I can speak," she said. "I am no witch," the princes loudly agreed, and told the king of the events that had led them to this moment. As they spoke, flowers bloomed, church bells pealed, and song thrushes added their music. The king and Elise could not have been happier. The end. Well, I personally think that that was a really good story. I like that this story kind of focuses on, like, I guess, sibling relationships, if that makes sense. Just because, I feel like a lot of these, and I mean, it does end with her, like, the princess being married to a king or whatever, but I feel like a lot of the time that's really the only point that people write these stories, is so that the princess will get married and live happily ever after in the end. And usually they leave their family or whatever. But Elise's father is certainly interesting. I mean, like, why would you believe your wife telling lies about your own children? I don't know. I feel like a good parent wouldn't do that, especially if the wife was just now becoming a part of their family and stuff. And why would you let her send your daughter away? I don't get it. Also, I find it really weird how the king just, like, took Elise back to his castle and declared that they would get married despite her not speaking or saying anything. That is a bit weird, but then again, it might have made more sense back in these days. But yeah, overall, this was a really enjoyable story, and yeah, let me know your thoughts on it. My next, let me find it. My next story will be, let's see. Ooh, Rapunzel. I'm excited for that one, actually. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to that. And if you are too, then make sure to come back next time. And yeah, but I will see you later. Bye for now. I hope you're having an amazing day.